How incredible is it that Auburn's young receivers lived up to the hype?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Lindsay, Crosby hanging out with us as he does every single Monday, recapping that 73-3 victory over Alabama A&M. I've said it 1,000 times now, Lindsay, and it's still just, it doesn't feel like a real score that happened. I want to talk about some of the defensive line. I want to talk about some of the running back situation and really the storyline at left tackle now that we've got some numbers. I think that's fascinating. But to me, like, we still can't gloss over the fact of like, okay, these receivers lived up to the hype. I mean, how many times have we hyped up guys that have came in and then they lay an egg? And that's what was so refreshing about Rivaldo Fairweather last year. And now all of a sudden you've got all these young receivers that have come in and it's like, yes, they are legitimate. And Auburn can overachieve this season because of these wide receivers.
Do you remember the 1,000-yard campaign hype for Shane Hooks last offseason?
I feel like I led that, and boy, was I wrong.
But there was a couple things I found really interesting about these guys. But the number one takeaway, like you said, is just they all looked as good as advertised, right? They all looked like we thought they were going to. They did a great job. And honestly, it's something where you love how competitive they were on every single play, how dominant they were. It felt like they could, a ball in their area, they were going to win the jump ball if that's what the situation was. If it was a double move, they were going to burn the guy. They were going to get open when they had to, even when the ball wasn't coming their way. Some of that scheme, obviously, you change play callers. Hugh Freeze is now doing that. Him and Brent and Nick's together calling plays. Sure. But some of it's just the raw talent these kids have is so much better. And honestly, I love it.
Yeah, and it's the burst. I mean, everything about the offense, especially in the first half when there were still quote-unquote relevant snaps, the pacing was faster. The guys with the ball in their hands, it was faster. I mean, the burst that Malcolm Simmons possesses is insane. We saw it when it was Peyton Thorne getting the ball, and then when Hank got him the ball in that RPO, it was a one-on-one situation on the outside. It's just the burst and the speed and KLS when he's running his routes and just kind of getting to the open space and the quarterback's finding him. I mean, all of these guys, it's so much faster than it was a year ago. And look, anytime we talk about this game moving forward, it's just assume it's under the caveat, yes, it's Alabama A&M. But some of the stuff that they did had nothing to do with Alabama A&M. Cam Coleman's going to cook other corners once conference play goes around. And like that poor guy who played corner for Alabama A&M just happened to be the first casualty in all of this. Like, that's going to happen again. That wasn't because Alabama A&M's corner, was told to bite on that route. It's because Cam Coleman sold it. And that's going to happen every single time. He's going to make corners stand up. And I just think when you look at it and compare it to what happened a year ago when Auburn played UMass, which UMass isn't a very good team. And Auburn scored a lot of points against UMass, but it didn't look like that, Lindsay. It didn't look like just sheer dominance. We're playing two different sports here.
Yeah, and I think the way that Auburn did it, too, was different than versus UMass. Because it's just, you kind of assume, like, Auburn's going to be that team. They're just going to run the ball. And they're going to kind of impose their will in the running game and then kind of set up some passing stuff. And, like, Auburn ran the ball 18 times all game. Yeah. It was just, like, you didn't have to find ways to make the passing offense work. And that's the first time we've been able to say that in probably, I don't know, at least 5 years, maybe, that you had dudes that could beat other dudes in front of them, and they did constantly.
And what's crazy about this, Auburn scored so fast. I mean, it was a chunk play after chunk play, explosive touchdown. They only ran 46 offensive plays, according to PFF, which is insane. Auburn's leading player from a snap count standpoint was Peyton Thorne on offense, and he played 32 snaps. And you just talk about like the grueling schedule of the SEC and the grind. And none of these guys played that much, which is encouraging, especially with these wide receivers. Perry Thompson played 8 snaps. Malcolm Simmons led the way with 16. Burton had 8. KLS only played 12. Robert Lewis played 14. I mean, it's just kind of amazing to think about all the production they had, and none of them played that much.
Yeah. Cam Brown had 21, but I think a lot of those came in the second half and non-competitive situations. So
and Bryce Kane had 17 somehow. I just totally missed that.
Yeah. But no, it was something where like you could tell the plan was when these kids are in the game, let's make them the first option on the play. Obviously, you don't have to go to them. And a lot of these were RPOs, and you didn't even have to throw the ball at all. But after that Jarquez, that first carry being a touchdown, A&M definitely said, we're not going to let them beat us like that again. And so they decided to just forget how to cover the pass for 3 quarters. But the big thing, you said it at the very top, they did what we expected them to do, right? And it just feels like that's something we've not had in years.
And I think just the overall spacing on offense, it forced everybody to be in a one-on-one situation. And just watching a little bit of that Cal versus UC Davis game, which that was not an impressive team, by the way. Cal won, not impressively, and there's a few things we'll get into over the course of the week. But I just think when they play against teams that have a few weak links in the opposing defensive backfield, Hugh Freeze's ability to scheme up one-on-one situations across the board in this RPO style of offense. And the extreme example is Hank's touchdown pass to Malcolm, or the first touchdown pass from Peyton to KLS, or to Cam Coleman, or to Perry. I mean, all of these were just true one-on-one situations, and Auburn's guy lined up and said, I'm better than you. Now, is the talent differential going to be like as dramatic once conference play starts? No. I mean, obviously not. It's going to be a closer battle. But over the course of 4 quarters, you got to like Auburn's situation after what you just saw and their ability to perform and compete on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's at the point after this game, and with the caveat of the opponent, you can see Auburn's offense being able to compete with any defense in the country. And I don't think that's a place you've been for a while because of the talent, because of the scheme, because of the play caller.
You're ready. You're comfortable making that statement. You're there where Auburn can compete against any defense in the country.
I'm not saying beat them, but I'm saying I feel
so you said the word compete. Well, I mean, that's important. Sure.
I feel like if you have a starting 3 out wide of Cam Coleman, KLS, and then whoever the third
appears to be Malcolm Simmons.
Malcolm Simmons. There was an injury issue there. Shout out to Daryl for breaking that news on the show.
Right.
But I'm confident that those 3 guys will be able to win their share of one-on-one battles and get open. And I did not feel like that last year. I did not feel like that the last couple years. Even when you had amazingly talented players who went to the league, like Seth Williams and Anthony Schwartz, I didn't necessarily feel like they would be able to get open. Maybe I felt that they would be able to get the ball in. Seth Williams could go up and win a 50-50. Schwartz could burn a guy deep once a game. But I didn't feel like they consistently could battle and could get open more often than not. And I feel like you're at the point athletically where this offense can do that no matter who is on the other side. Now, do I have questions about can the pass rush get to Peyton Thorne against better teams, things like that? Yes, but I feel like you're at the point now where you can at least compete.
Yeah.
And this is all kind of understanding you didn't really use the running game a lot on Saturday.
No, you didn't use it hardly at all.
Yeah. And when you did, I mean, it was they were getting 10 yards a carry in that game.
Yeah, 9.8 average. Yeah, you had 18 rush attempts as a team.
Yeah. And so it feels like you're not going to be as pass heavy because some of the RPOs you'll have an opportunity to hand the ball off versus pulling it down and throwing. But when you have that extra dimension that Auburn didn't really use last night, you should be able to compete with almost any defense in the country.
Yeah. I mean, from your mouth to God's ears, my guy, 100%. And we won't fully know that until week 5. Or when they go to Athens, depending on what happens with Oklahoma, Arkansas, and then Cal, of course, this weekend. So, but all in all, the receivers living up to the hype, they open up the chance for Auburn to overachieve this year, which is what we all hoped for. And then it was more than just names on a piece of paper. They actually went on the field and did it. And they scored 73 points, which is still just insane.
Wild.
The left tackle spot, we talked about that a ton the weeks leading up to kickoff. I think we've got the answer, and it seems pretty clear. Let's jump into that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at 5 Hour Energy. Lindsay, can you imagine being tired and not doing anything about it and going to our friends at 5 Hour Energy?
I can't imagine being tired and not choosing. You know what? Let me try a 5 Hour Energy. That is the largest 5 Hour Energy I have ever seen, but they do more than just the shots of energy. They do the cans of energy as well.
Yeah, they do the energy drinks, which I went to 5 Hour, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and I ordered some of the shots, the grape ones in honor of Charlie 5, as well as some of the berry punch energy drinks that they have. But look, it's good for anything. It's good for focus. It's good for motivation. It's good for a pre-workout. Whatever it is, they've got you covered. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, once again, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can check out all of the different types of 5 Hour Energy product that they have. Use our code LOCKEDONCFB, all one word, LOCKEDONCFB, to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. So be sure to check that out. Locked On CFB. That's at 5hourenergy.com. Lindsay, the battle between Tyler Johnson and Percy Lewis at left tackle. I mean, it raged on into the season, and we'll see if they announce anything officially. They announced them both as starters before the game inside Jordan-Hare Stadium, but the one who did take the first snap was Tyler Johnson. And then not only that, he played 23 snaps on Saturday, and Percy Lewis played 9. So one, I think that's pretty telling. The other aspect of this, like Pro Football Focus is not everything, but there is irony here where it's like, okay, the reason there was so much buzz about Percy Lewis was because PFF loved him so much and he was graded so high for what he did at Mississippi State. But Tyler Johnson scored a 90.8. He was Auburn's 3rd highest offensive rated player, also 3rd highest on the team behind Peyton Thorne and Perry Thompson. And then Percy Lewis was a 24th ranked offensive player with a 65.8 over his 9 plays. So the analytics love what Tyler Johnson did more than Percy Lewis on Saturday. And also it seems like the coaching staff did too. That's one, why they started him, and 2, why he played more than twice as many reps as him.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm a little bit surprised about is Percy Lewis got the default run blocking grade of 60. I wonder how many times Auburn ran the ball with him in the game, because he feels like, as a larger person, a larger man, he feels like he would be probably potentially better as a run blocker than a pass blocker. And then obviously getting that default grade. But I mean, Tyler Johnson,
he ran block once. They ran the ball once of the 9 plays he was in there. The other 8 were pass blocks.
There you go. See, Tyler Johnson had more of a balanced distribution, 13 passes, 10 runs. But he graded out, he had the highest run blocking grade on the team at 91.2. So it feels like this is decided. Either way, though, I feel like having Percy Lewis, if he's your 3rd tackle, gives you a very, very high floor at tackle. When I'll remind you, going into at the end of when Harsin was fired, right? You were questioning whether or not you would have 5 scholarship offensive linemen the next season. And then to not only go from that to having Percy Lewis as your 6th lineman,
right?
It's a great place to be. But no, like, shout out to Tyler Johnson for just working and earning the job.
Yeah, 100%. And just to add to what you're saying, like going into the season, we felt good about the tackle spot because we said, well, Tyler Johnson's your third tackle. We've just kind of flipped the order. Like, we still feel good about the top 3 tackles. It's just the order is different. Also worth noting, Dylan Wade played 29 snaps. I believe that was the most of all offensive linemen for what that's worth. And that was kind of a common theme that we saw last year as well. He would play more reps than almost anybody. And all of them were at left guard. There was some talk about how in practice they were going to see, like, where do we put Dylan Wade? Do we move him back to left tackle like they played him a year ago? As far as in the game, they didn't, which also tells me that they feel good about what they saw with Tyler Johnson. Because if there was a question of, okay, are one of these 2 guys between Tyler Johnson and Percy Lewis not the answer at left tackle? Do we move Dylan Wade to left tackle and give him some game reps? They didn't do that. Unless for some reason they feel like, okay, we know, like, he's got the game reps from a year ago. We're not worried about that. But to me, I think they're sold at this point on Tyler Johnson, which is just a wild turn of events over the last month still.
It's great improvement. And that was the other part of the not being worried about the left tackle situation, was whether it's Percy Lewis or Tyler Johnson, either way, you still had Dylan Wade on the roster, and he was the guy last year. So worst case scenario, you could just throw him back out there. But like you said, him not being used out there once tells me that, barring multiple injuries, they don't expect to need him at tackle this year, which speaks to, the upgrade that you got from a wingspan perspective, from a athleticism perspective. Not that he's not athletic, but he's not where Tyler Johnson or Percy Lewis is. And then just there's something to be said about having the comfort and reassurance of knowing that were the worst case scenario to happen and you were to lose one of these tackles for the rest of the season, you have other guys that you trust. Because even when Auburn had a starting 5, last year, you really didn't feel like you had more than one extra guy out wide with Too Tall Miller and more than one guy in the middle, and you saw Connor Lew take over at center.
Exactly.
You really didn't feel like more than one injury, you could afford that from a continuity perspective, from a performance perspective. And there's just something to be said for having that comfort now.
Yeah, and a year ago, we probably would have said Jaden Muskrat could have been that next guy, but like, we never really hear anything about him. Like, I honestly don't know what the staff thinks about Jaden Muskrat at this point, because
he got 9 snaps.
Yeah, and like, what did Tate Johnson get? Tate Johnson's kind of a guy that his name never really goes away. Like, he's always kind of there.
He got 16 snaps at center last night. Probably, I think is the number 2 behind center. Connor Lew. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's not a surprise there. Yeah, so I mean, all in all, that I think you can make the argument though that it's better for Auburn long term if Tyler Johnson does beat out Percy Lewis, because you've got him. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman, right? And so you've got him for the foreseeable future. Yeah, you don't have to replace a left tackle in the transfer portal, and so that allows you to spend your NIL money elsewhere if that's the route you need to go. Which there are going to be some positions that are scarce, and so not having to drop, a ton of money on a left tackle is going to be super, super valuable. So Tyler Johnson getting those reps is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing.
Let me help you with maybe how the staff feels about Jaden Muskrat. Tate Johnson got 16 reps at center, but EJ Harris got 14 reps at guard, and Ronan Chambers got 19 reps at center. They both got more snaps than he got at tackle.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those like, okay, don't quite know exactly what happened there. Maybe and it's hard to assume that's just we trust him. We've seen enough of him to know what he can do. It feels like that's more of we're not quite sure what his role is, and we don't really think we're going to need him that much. And if that's a miss, I'm not going to say it's a miss yet, but if that's a miss, that's maybe the first offensive line miss you've seen in the Hugh Freeze era. And if so, what a position to be in.
Yeah, but also, like, is it a miss? Like, what were they really expecting of him? Because like the addition last year of him was like, okay, he could be a depth piece, and then maybe start the following year
in case of emergency.
Yeah, right. Which is probably still where he's at. He's an upperclassman, so we'll see. But all in all, yeah, I think the left tackle battle is done. It appears that it's going to be Tyler Johnson moving forward, which is best for Auburn long term, because you'll have a returning left tackle next season if that's the case. The running back room is interesting, and I've got a tidbit that I want to share about this in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our favorite mobile app, Ultimate College Football head coach Lindsay. Can you imagine just stepping into the shoes of a head coach of a football program?
I'm sorry, what did you say? I was stepping into the shoes of a head coach of a football program on my phone right now.
Yes, you were, because you have the Ultimate College Football head coach mobile game, the free app that you can download in your phone's app store. And look, it is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. And you can play on the go as you want, when you want. But we do have a special offer for you. You can go into the store in the app and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, no spaces, LOCKEDONCFB. And when you do that inside the game store, you receive a free boost to your program to make sure to take advantage of this perk. It's like a donor just really dishes out NIL for you. Just think of it that way.
My program is much better since I used code LOCKEDONCFB in the game store.
That's right. It's an amazing game, and simulation allows you to step into the shoes of that head coach and build the program that you want. To download the game, visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on your phone's app store today. It's very, very fun. Lindsay, when you look at the running back pecking order, and I talked about this with Daryl a little bit yesterday, but the divide, like it really did seem like it was Jarquez Hunter and Damari Alston and then Jeremiah Cobb. And I don't know how much of that was the planning of the flow of the game because they expected the twos to go in for a big chunk of the game and they needed to put Cobb with Hank because they've gotten a lot of reps together. And so that was kind of, they predicted that they were going to play more guys, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Or is there an actual divide that's that large? To me, I think it was more of a prediction of this is how the game was going to go. They knew Cobb was going to get his reps, but they were going to do it with the twos.
If you have the foresight to pre-negotiate a running clock in 10-minute quarters, I feel like you have the foresight to say, hey, let's figure out our position groupings for the second half of the game when it's solidly put away. And we can say who's going to work well with who. And again, this is a situation I've talked about all the time about you want a quarterback throwing to receivers he's thrown to before that he has chemistry with. You want a quarterback and a running back who are comfortable doing handoffs, understand what the other's thinking about pass protections. Do you got to go pick this guy up? Things like that. I do think it's relevant that of Jeremiah Cobb's 7 snaps, 3 runs, 3 passes, he was in there to pass block as well. Like he pass blocked. Damari Alston got 3, Jarquez Hunter got 2, but like Cobb was in there, so, trying to protect Hank. And that's not something that I think you would necessarily be working on with just a quarterback and a running back who had never been on the field together or had not that often. Right? That's a chemistry thing. The quarterback needs to know he's going to have that free blitzer, right? So it makes sense they would put those guys together. I'm curious to see what happens against another team where it's a little more of an even matchup later in the game, unlike this one.
Yeah, and we'll learn that on Saturday against Cal. I mean, even if the backups do play in the fourth quarter, because I do think that'll happen. I think Auburn's going to win by a good bit. I think Cobb plays relevant snaps on Saturday for when the game is still competitive. So we'll see. On the topic of running backs, an NFL scout texted me on Sunday.
Flex.
And said, one thing to note, we were texting back and forth on a few things, but one thing to note in highlighting the pass game, the series in the first quarter around the 6:30 mark, Damari Alston has back-to-back blitz pickups. Scouts love that stuff. And that got some love from folks at the Barn message board. Join it today, thebarnauburn.com. But yeah, to me, I think that's kind of the thing that's going to keep you on the field. And we've talked about the battle between Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb to be that back behind Jarquez Hunter. And it's doing stuff like that gets you more reps to be RB2. And so to me, maybe that's why Damari Alston is ahead of Jeremiah Cobb right now.
And I do think also Jeremiah Cobb had 19 special team snaps and Alston didn't take a single one. And so like that's telling to me as far as we're trying to we're going to use both guys. We think both guys have valid roles, but we're not going to risk Damari Alston on special teams because we think he's an important backup to Jarquez Hunter. Jarquez was on the field for a kick coverage snap, which is odd, but it's something where
don't like that.
Cobb had 19 special team snaps. He was covering kicks. He was on punt return. He was on punt coverage. He was on kick return.
Mm-hmm.
He had a big role on special teams, and that's one of those things to me. Yes, Auburn used Keontae Scott return a few times, but I think it's telling to see who they are not using and who they are using.
Right.
I think that's another bit of evidence that Austin may be ahead of Cobb in the pecking order, and if so, okay, that's, you know what? I trust them to understand what's best for the team and how to use each guy. I just find that really interesting. He only had 56 kick coverage snaps all year last year. He already has 10 after week 1.
Do you think Damari Alston switching from 22 to 0 makes him a better running back? Because, boy, he looks sharp wearing number 0.
I have a theory about the guys with the low numbers, right? Like the offensive players, it's just, okay, one, the fastest player on your team needs to wear number 1. Peyton Thorne, take it off. Listen, I'm happy with Peyton Thorne. Call this the Percy Harvin rule. The fastest player on your team needs to wear number 1. But also, for some reason, the 00 is just, I'm going to call it savage. I don't really know a better way to do it. Like number 0, that's got to be a great offensive threat. I feel like you can't give 0 to an offensive player if he's not able to both work as a receiver and a runner. I feel like since they allowed guys to wear 0, the guys that have done that on offense have been multi-dimensional threats.
Mm-hmm.
So that is
my theory. You
can't
wear 0 and not like you've got to be able to believe in yourself if you're wearing 0. Like you've got
confidence
that confidence
required to put on number 0 has to be very good. But it's just like 0 and 1 to me are kind of special numbers on offense.
Yeah.
And it bothers me a little bit that Peyton Thorne is wearing number 1 and not Malcolm Simmons. Because after yesterday, I think Malcolm Simmons might be the fastest player on this team.
I mean, he's the most explosive. His burst is insane. He's wearing 2 number 1s, right? He's 11, right?
Yeah, he's 11, which it kind of feels like maybe that's the fallback because he couldn't get 1. But I bet you if Peyton Thorne would switch off of 1, he'd take it in a heartbeat.
He should.
Maybe 1 should be the special one that they give out and you can't ask for it. Kind of like how Texas A&M doesn't let you pick to wear number 12.
Mm-hmm. Or LSU's
good offensive teams,
7 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Good offensive teams should make you request 1.
Yeah. I'm all for it. One other thing that I want to discuss on the defensive side of the ball, Robert Woodyard led Auburn in snaps on Saturday with 42. But the guy who was second on the team in snaps with 41 total snaps was Amaris Williams. And we've heard nothing but incredible things about him all fall camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't notice him on Saturday. And even parts of the game where I rewatched it, it's just, I didn't see Amaris. I didn't notice Amaris. He never really did anything that drew attention. And maybe we're putting too much pressure on a true freshman in his first game. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I need a perspective check on that. But we heard so much about this pass rush, and there were moments that were really good. No question about it. And I love that Keldrick Falk went after this dude, their tackle who's getting NFL attention. I think that's awesome. I didn't realize that was a thing until the game started. I'm like, sweet. Incredible. We get real reps here. Mm-hmm. And Keldrick was incredible. And then obviously Jalen McLeod was incredible. He was Auburn's highest scoring player on defense according to Pro Football Focus. But outside of that, I think there were times where Kieron Crawford was a little underwhelming, both as a pass rusher and there were a few times where it looked like it was his job to keep containment and he just didn't on a few counters. And to me, I'm not as fired up about the defense as other people are based off of what we saw on Saturday. And I want more from young guys like Amaris, who played 41 snaps, and we didn't see anything from you.
I did expect more as far as sacks and hurries than I think we got. Now, the flip side of this is I'm okay playing Kieron Crawford 39 snaps, playing
100%.
Playing Amaris Williams 41 snaps, because we need to figure out who are your 2 and 3. We know Jalen McLeod is great, right? We know Keldrick Falk is great. we need these guys. And to me, rushing the passer isn't as solely based on athleticism as people assume. There is more about technique. There is more about understanding, being able to diagnose what an opposing tackle is trying to do against you and figure out how to counter it. Mm-hmm. And so getting these guys who have never been in the SEC before. Kieran Crawford was obviously at a lower level last year. Yeah. At a group of 5 school. Marshall Williams was in high school last year.
That's right.
Getting these guys reps against Division I, opponents, even though it is not the level of a A&M or Alabama or somebody, I think is important. I'm fine with the concept of playing them 41 snaps. I think that if you continue to do that in the month of August, you're going to see them be able to have more impact because they're learning on the job, right? Yeah. I trust a freshman wide receiver. Be the dude in front of you and you're open. Defense, pass rushing, it feels like it should be beat the guy in front of you and you have a sack, but it's a little more complicated than that.
There's a reason you see freshman receivers do stuff throughout the league and you don't see freshman pass rushers do it. There's a reason. You're 100% right.
I like them getting more snaps.
Yeah, still very high on Amaris Williams. I love that he got 41 snaps. I want to see more. And maybe we'll see it against Cal. I hope we do. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on? You got some fun, new, exciting things.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. If you are a fan of the Atlanta Braves, the BravesToday.com takes you to not only the podcast that we have, daily podcast, but also the brand new Substack. BravesToday.com is a Substack covering the Atlanta Braves without all the clickbaity stuff. It's just the good content.
Yes. Yeah. Be sure to go support Lindsay over there. BravesToday.com. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.